I'm using a lot of junk mail and newspaper and that sort of thing, but I do like to add into that some of the origami paper, which is the traditional paper with the lovely traditional designs on, because I feel that it kind of reflects what Japan is like, really. It's this mix of the very modern and the very ancient, so I kind of love to add little snippets of the origami paper in for that reason. And it's very decorative as well, so it's lovely to use. So I'm just bringing in here some interesting pieces, and some of it's really works really well, like this kind of checkerboard effect here. So I'm gradually building up this area with the colourful signs and the shop fronts down here and the sides of the buildings. I want to do a little bit to this area, and so I'm using a palette knife with some of the paint, because with a palette knife you can with the edge of the palette knife you can get some nice sharp edges, and I just want to bring that in just to help with some of these buildings here at this stage. Don't want to cover up the paper completely. But it does help to kind of give the effect of the angles and the sharpness of everything, which will contrast quite nicely because I've got all the figures down here, so you've got that contrast between the very geometric shapes of these buildings and the signs, and then you will have the figures in the foreground. So it's handy occasionally to use different ways of applying paint. It's why it's useful to use heavy body acrylic. And I can go in and add a bit more paper over the top as well. I'm also thinking about the tones and how light or dark I want things to be. So it's quite, you know, as I work through the painting, that's the sort of thing I need to bear in mind for it to work. So a little bit of palette knife work occasionally is quite useful, but I'm probably still going to add more paper on over the top. I've found these pieces from a manga book, which I think will work quite well for some of that. probably haven't finished this area, but I want to start to get an idea of where the figures are coming a bit more. So I'm just going to very loosely block in some of the shapes. Again, it's not set in stone, it's just an idea of how it's going to work together, and then I can start to see how the painting's taking shape. It's very easy to get lost in this type of painting, which is very complicated, lots of different shapes. So I just want to just see how it's coming together, because I can change things, I can alter this if it's not working quite right. There's a lady with the parasol here, and it's taken up, she's actually quite a large figure in the foreground here, so I want to get her in just to give me a little idea of how that's going to work. So she's sort of coming right off the bottom of the canvas there. Which I quite like that, because it gives a feeling of movement as well. And it'll kind of, we've got a figure here that's sort of quite central. So that will kind of counterbalance this sort of centre point here. It's not really as big as that, so I need to kind of adjust the shape, but it's just a rough idea. All this is going to be covered up. There's a figure behind the umbrella, but I might, kind of quite good having things overlapping, because again that gives a feeling of depth and movement. So it's going to change dramatically when I start to get the figures in. I've got a big area here to do with all the bits and pieces from this market stall. And there's a figure here, kind of stationary, looking at the things on the stand on the stall. So it's quite roughly done, but it is giving me more of an idea of how it's all going to work. In the street they've got these, I think they're actually lights, but they're on a kind of a curved, all down the street there's these curved shapes with lights on. So I'm going to try and hint at that. I'm not quite sure how, but I'm going to try and put that in, because anybody that knows the area will recognise those sort of shapes. So I'm going to, not too obvious, but I'm going to try and at some point put those in. So quite pleased with how it's going, but still a lot more to do. So I've added these strange shapes here. They actually have lamps on them through the street. It's a bit odd, I must admit, but I'm going to stick with it for now. And they've got, I'm going to add some more further down the street, so they're going to just be very faint. Don't want them to be too overpowering. And I might just soften those just slightly. See how it looks. I've actually got lamps on them which are like street lights, I suppose. Strange sort of design, but that's what it is. So I think probably what I'll do is just get some paint sort of on a dry brush, and I'm just going to try and just soften them slightly, just to take it off so they're less obvious. I'm not too happy with that, but probably as I work on the whole thing it will fall into place a bit. So it's a combination of collage and paint. And I have these strange shapes off of them, which I think are basically where the lights are, so it's kind of part of the feel of the place. I suppose I ought to put them in, but it gives it a bit of a strange sort of feel at this stage. So I'm not so sure. I might actually take them out. Let's just try. The thing with collage, if it's wet, you can usually get it off and not panic if the glue's still wet. So actually, even if there's a hint of it, actually it looks better when I've kind of got part of it off. I actually think that works better. So I'm not going to take them out completely, I'm just sort of taking some of that off. And I actually think that I could leave that like that, so you've got a hint at that strange lamp post on this side. Just soften that a little bit. Actually that's okay. I feel a bit happy about it now. Sometimes it's a balance between, when you're working in this quite free sort of way, it's a balance between what's actually there and how you want the painting to look. So, you know, you don't have to put everything in. You can leave some things out, but you know, that's kind of hinted at these sort of shapes in the street. I'm just going to add another one here, just very lightly. Kind of will make more sense, I think, once I've got the rest of it in. Yeah, I think that's okay. I'm going to add some stronger shapes here because I think that will help to distract from the strange shape of that. So, and as the closer you get, obviously, it's all about perspective. The bigger the shapes are, and so something like that is going to make things come forward here. There's some windows which I might actually put in. So what I'm going to do is cut some shapes, and I like to get the perspective on that a bit better. So something like that is going to help as well, or add to the perspective. Just a little bit there. I suppose it's a question of choosing what you want to put in and what you want to leave out, and putting in enough to describe the scene, really. Using the scissors quite a lot, having said it mostly it'll be torn, it's actually quite a lot of scissors in this. I think because we've got these very definite shapes of the of all the signs and the buildings, I've tried to tear some of it, but some of it's done with the scissors. And as I get to the people, that will be much more about just tearing the shapes. So I don't, when I'm working like this, I don't want to describe everything equally. So I've got some areas that are going to have a bit more detail than others, and that's what goes in with sort of creating the freedom in the painting. You can have some areas that are very free and some that have a bit more detail, and that all helps to, it all comes together in the end with a work that's quite not quite loose in style. So I want to get some even smaller shapes, just to do a little bit. We're going to have some people, the heads and figures, but I want to add some smaller shapes first of the background, basically shop signs, because I think that's going to help with the perspective a bit. So I'm just finding and cutting up some very small pieces before I start working on the figures.